from AB Consulting. I'm so excited to be here today with Melissa Biggs Bradley. Melissa is the CEO of Indagare Travel, a company she founded in 2007. It's really a bespoke travel company, and also they produce an incredible amount of digital content. She really founded the company on the philosophy that travel is not just about where you go, but also how the journey shapes you, which we absolutely love. Melissa has been recognized as one of the leading entrepreneurs in the luxury travel space, and Indagare has also been named as one of the fastest growing companies in the US by Inc. magazine. It's such a privilege to be here with you today, and it's so great to see you. As we're here together, I'm so fondly reminded of the last time we saw each other, which was many years ago at a cafe in New York, and I was with the Oberoi group at the time, and we were talking about all things travel and how you started Indagare. And I'll never forget, I mentioned to you that I was headed to Venice that fall, and you so graciously gifted me with the Venice and Paris guides from Indagare, which I still have today. They're in my basement because, now we live our lives on apps and smartphones and Google Maps, but very, very fond memories. So it's so wonderful to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Amrita, it's lovely to see you again too, and thank you for having me.
Wanted to check in and see how you're doing and hear more from you about how your business has innovated and evolved during this time, both on the people side as well as the product side.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that this pandemic has taught us, as the hurricane swirls around me, right, that we need to be reminded that nature is really the master here, and we have to ride out, storms by being flexible. And so certainly this has been a storm that none of us expected or had experience for. So we're all adapting and learning how to live with uncertainty and how to make changes in a way where you can't exactly forecast. So we have in terms of people, obviously the first thing that we realized was, and I think everybody has, we had ideas of how long we thought the pandemic was going to last. And we made some initial adjustments to our staff, which we had spent many years cultivating an incredible group of people. And it was very difficult to have to let some of them go early on, but we did that because we knew that this was going to last, months, and it was probably going to bring, travel revenues to zero, which it certainly did for a couple of months. And now we've all seen that it's going to be longer. So, it's been very hard to have a staff that, we spent a lot of time curating in many ways and nurturing, and we created kind of a family experience, and to have some of them have to leave was heartbreaking. It was certainly the hardest part of my business journey thus far. And yet we also are, as I said, we're a very close team. So as soon as we understood that travel as we had known it was going to radically change, we sort of put our heads together and said, our mission is to inspire and empower people to change their lives through travel. We can't really empower them so much right now. We were spending a lot of time unwinding reservations and securing refunds, but we can still inspire them. And so we really focused on engaging our membership with virtual travel and supporting our partners around the world who were locked down and who still wanted to share their passion for their destinations and their knowledge in their communities. And so we launched a global classroom in the last weeks of March, and we've been running programs every single day since then, as well as our Global Conversations podcast. We've focused much more on domestic trips. We've started a member-to-member home marketplace. So we've listened to our customers. We've done more surveys than we've ever done before to really understand what is it they want to know about. Health and safety obviously are hugely important. So we beefed up our content on that, and different ways to travel virtually. So we've given them playlists for music from around the world, and recipes and classes with chefs from around the world, and wine tastings and book recommendations. And we've really figured out how you can still explore even when you're at home. So it's
and I can truly attest to the fact that you've done such a great job with branching out digitally. I love your podcasts. I love the Global Conversations podcast. Tell us a little bit more about the origin of the podcasts and maybe what our audience can look forward to.
Okay, well, so the podcast, I have to say, it's kind of a combination of an aha light bulb moment and a selfish solution, because pretty soon, maybe 10 days into lockdown, when I really realized that I was not going to be getting on a plane and I was not going to be meeting with people around the world, which I've been able to do for the past 30 years on a very regular basis, I thought, okay, this is hard, so hard for me. And what is it that I miss the most? And what I really miss the most is not the act of getting on a plane. It was having this exchange with people in different cultures and really knowing and growing through those exchanges. And I thought, okay, I can't do that by getting on a plane, but I can reach out to these incredible people that I've met in the course of my travels, and we can still have conversations. And so I literally woke up and I said to my team, we're going to start having conversations with the people who inspire us because of what they know about a place or how they've devoted their lives to certain kind of passions. And I imagine other people will be interested. And so we started them as classrooms, then we turned them into podcasts. And it's been really amazing because I've talked to so many people that I've been able to meet over the years. I mean, from Oberoi, I'm sure you know Fiona Caulfield, who's been an India expert for years. She came up with these wonderful Love India guides that are really sustainable guides that support communities around the world. And there's almost always a component of giving back to the people that we interview. So I ask all of my guests, what's the charitable organization that people can donate to have a positive impact in your part of the world? And so we've had conservationists like Derek and Beverly Joubert, who started the Rhinos Without Borders project, incredible filmmakers. We've had the man who started the Cambodia Children's Fund, who was a huge Hollywood executive who gave up his life with yachts and private planes to save thousands of children in the dumps in Phnom Penh and get them education. And they're just really inspiring people. We've talked to chefs who are on the front lines of watching their industry be devastated and trying to figure out how to have an impact to change that, both locally and on a national level. And so, I have wonderful people, again, through my travels that I've met that are just doing inspiring things. So upcoming weeks, we have Rodman Premack, who is the creative director of Design Miami, coming on to talk about Mexico City and sort of being a global nomad and with a design perspective. Anna Trzbinski, who's a fashion designer out of Kenya, who's had a fascinating life and does very high-end fashion. Actually, Ralph Lauren was one of the people who said to her, you're much more authentic than I am. You need to turn this into a brand. And all of her accessories and fashions are handmade by Maasai and Samburu women that she's worked with for 15 years, and she's keeping that collective alive. And so it's just really interesting people each week that we get to speak to.
Oh my gosh, I'm also excited. Thank you for sharing that. And Melissa, I so agree with your sentiment, and when all of this started too, I think that was a little bit of the impetus for us with AB Talks was, the industry that you love personally and professionally, literally has been decimated. And you think, wait a second, how do we kind of create a sense of community as well? So thank you for that. We talked a little bit about this, but future travel trends, what are you hearing from your membership or people that you're connecting with? It seems like it's a while away before we can kind of get back to the way that we once traveled, but I think it's so important to keep dreaming and keep aspiring to that. What are you hearing and seeing in terms of, what the future holds for us?
There's going to be different phases that we go through as the future unfolds. And, one phase obviously that we've already seen is just, traveling locally first. In all my years of being alive, a US passport was usually something that gained me entry into countries all over the world. And now most of the world is off limits to us. And so, part of that's by necessity, but I think part of it's also by design. I think one of the things that COVID-19 has made us all so much more aware of is the impact of travel. And I've thought a lot about not just the need to be more conscious of the choices that we make because of the climate impact and sustainability. I think everybody has, but I'd thought a lot about over tourism before COVID-19. I'm on the board of the Center for Responsible Travel in DC, and that was one of the topics that we did our summit on last year. And over tourism was something that was of a great concern to a lot of us in the industry. And that's not an issue anymore. My big worry is the idea of under tourism and the fact that we could have so many wonderful communities and businesses around the world that have been really supported and sustained by travel and by the role of people going into places like Costa Rica and giving that economy an option to not go into logging or mining. So I think there's a lot of things that are going to change how we approach travel after COVID-19. And sort of in the short term, I think we're obviously all taking a much more local look and traveling closer to home, partly because of desire, but also partly because of restrictions around the world. And so I think it's made people rethink their own backyards, which is a positive thing. But then, the economic impact that the travel industry has gone through, and particularly the airlines, I think is very possibly going to swing us from over tourism, which was possible because airline travel was so affordable and accessible, to under tourism, which is equally concerning to me. Both are obviously big problems because they have negative impact on beautiful places that we love to travel. But under tourism is something I don't think we had anticipated could happen. And that is that as travel may become less accessible because airline prices go up and because airlines have gone out of business and hotels go out of business and because of the economic impacts of COVID-19, the decimation that could happen to communities and countries that are really dependent on tourism to sustain beautiful places and give communities alternatives to going into mining or logging or the amazing work that the safari lodges in Africa do to support conservation. If that goes away, that's concerning to me. So I think there's some big issues. Certainly one of the things that is connected to that, I think, is a big trend away from maybe consumptive travel and travel that we took a little bit for granted because it was so easy and it was so affordable that you could jump on a plane and go, to a different country for dinner or go across the country for a concert. I think people are going to be much more thoughtful and aware of the impact that flights have on the environment and will really be more immersive and thoughtful and considered in the choices that they make. And I think that could be a great thing, that people will go on maybe fewer trips, but longer trips and more immersive trips, that they spend a lot more time appreciating where they are as opposed to kind of rushing through. It's sort of the anti-Instagram phenomenon, I hope. And that's something that we're definitely seeing from members who are saying, and people in the industry, that there will be a seismic shift in how we appreciate something that we kind of started to take for granted. And that, I think, is going to bring a lot of good things with it.
I recently listened to your chat with Yale University, your alma mater, and interestingly enough, it was titled "The Accidental Entrepreneur," and you talk a little bit more about your journey in there as well. And one of the topics that we've been exploring a lot is around entrepreneurship, also, and how this whole piece has impacted women. And really, there's two parts to this question. One, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey to, Indagare, and also what advice could you give entrepreneurs and specifically for, female entrepreneurs in terms of leadership and traits to think about as we navigate, this next phase?
Well, okay. So the first one, I would say I was consider myself an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I love travel. That's what drew me to this industry. And yet, I think maybe as a woman or as it's part of my personality. I wanted to do provide travel information better than I was as an editor. And so, I finally became so frustrated with what we were able to provide in print that I wanted to come up with an alternative solution. And that sort of mission to do that led me to being an entrepreneur. But I really think that everybody today has to be entrepreneurial in their thinking. And going back to what you said about, what has this pandemic taught us? To me, it's taught us that you have to be innovative and you have to be adaptable. And that's really what entrepreneurship is about. It's about trying to figure out something that, is not necessarily fixed and continually improving it. And I think in any job that you have, the world is changing so rapidly. When I started, back when we met, magazines were very different in terms of the role that they played. But my kids, don't even know what a fax machine is. They don't understand the idea of print newspapers. And those were things that were enormously important to us in running our daily lives. And they're almost obsolete in certain ways. And so I think, we just all have to be very thoughtful about reinventing ourselves and thinking about the skills that make us valuable. And I think whether you're, no matter what, when people ask me, what do you think is most important in hiring people or in the kinds of early career that I should have, I think it's thinking about understanding other people, communicating, being able to analyze information, being able to ask questions, being able to structure your priorities and come up with game plans about how to affect change. So I think it's as important to be strategic as it is to be an executioner. If you can't execute on a plan, then it doesn't matter if you have a good plan. At the same time, if you're just doing things without a plan of what they're going to add up to, that doesn't work either. So, I think in some ways women are naturally inclined to be well suited at a lot of the adaptability that is required because women have to be multitaskers. We've always had to be multitaskers. In nature, women are doing lots of things and we have traditionally been trying to keep a lot of balls in the air. And so I think we're particularly well suited at that, and we're particularly well suited at listening. I think you have to understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And that's why I go back, when COVID-19 hit, to me, I sort of said to my team, what's our mission? Our mission is to inspire and empower people. So how do we do that when you can't get on a plane? We can still do it. And so I think, really understanding what you're trying to do. And then again, talking to your customer. I've always believed that I don't have the answers, but if I can go out and ask enough questions, I can probably get a consensus and build towards something. I hope that answers your question.
That absolutely does. And thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think more importantly than ever, reaching out to our audience to find out more about what they need and how we can support them. I wanted to just touch on one piece that you talked about, in your mission in terms of, what you're looking to deliver. And I'd love to talk about corporate culture, right? And the importance of culture. And many of our clients that we're working with now are really trying to figure out how that culture for them evolves, especially as people are working remotely. How do you stay connected? What does employee engagement look like beyond the annual survey? And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more around, where where you're thinking or what your programming is around corporate culture and how you see, Indagare sustaining that as you move forward.
Look, I think it's a challenge for everybody because this is a whole new world being remote. And my staff now is, we were just on a meeting and they're in probably 6 different states and there's only 12 people in the Zoom call. People have scattered. We were so used to coming together physically and being able to walk in and out of each other's offices to trade ideas. And the world has changed, and it will be this way for the foreseeable future. I mean, we have told our team, we're definitely not going back in the office, at least through this year. And so I think, you have to go back to what is the culture, what's important to you in your culture. And we thought about this early on as we went remote, and we realized it's about connecting with other people. And so even if it's not in a physical place, making time to have just casual check-ins. So we have, certain rituals in our organization where we have gratitude sessions on what we call it morning gratitude on Friday mornings. And whoever wants to come and be on a call and people talk about, what they are grateful for, what they, somebody that they know is going through a tough time, who they would like to send good wishes to. And it's a practice that we did in person for many years. And now we've kept it alive. We've kept certain, we used to have get-togethers in the office, Rosé Thursdays, we called them. And we have a book club for whoever wants to join. And even I think we're making more space in a lot of our regular meetings just to take time to ask people how they are and what's going on and where, what the weather's like, where they are. Because for us, so much of the culture comes from, the human connection. And if we, we're in the hospitality business, one of the single most important lessons I learned through my journey as an entrepreneur was, and I learned it the hard way because I didn't necessarily, initially I thought the most important thing when you hire someone is their capability and their intelligence. And whether or not they really share my values probably doesn't matter that much. Well, it does. It's much more important that somebody has a genuine hospitality gene and really and truly cares about other people and is going to be respectful and kind first and foremost, than if they're, super capable. And because somebody that doesn't share that can destroy your culture. And so we live by that. We have a rule, and we've had this for many years, which is why we're all so close, is that we really hire for, genuinely generous people who are generous of spirit and soul. And so, even when we're all really busy and we're remote, it's just important to make space to feel that amongst each other and to take care of each other. So the other thing that I would say is one of the podcast interviews I did last week was with Camilla Marcus, who's a restaurateur. And I loved a quote she said. She used to work for Danny Meyer, who is one of the heroes of the hospitality world to me. But she said, one of the great mantras of hers is something that her mother said, which is, perfect is boring. And, I think we all, in my organization, we strive for perfection, but we won't let that be an impediment to progress. And so, we really focus on, it's so much more important that we're trying things. We're rolling up our sleeves. We're trying with our hearts in the right places, even if we're getting it wrong, than that we're waiting to jump in until we have it figured out, because that's wasted time, particularly when people are, in uncertain times. It's so much more important to communicate and to open those channels of communication than to, have your strategy perfect.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, that connection element is so important. And I think in a way, it's almost an ideal time to experiment with ideas and things. I think people were just much more patient and forgiving, and also, it can kind of take you on a creative journey that can be equally inspiring. Melissa, we love to ask our guests, once all of this ends, which we hope is soon, what that ideal next destination would be for you to travel to. Now, given that you're so well traveled and you have so many wonderful stories, I was curious, is there sort of a destination calling out to you when it's safe to travel again?
In some ways I find myself going back. People have asked me before, what's your favorite destination? And I always give three answers. And it's the same three answers in terms of where I want to go next. And one is always Paris, because I lived there at a certain point, and I was lucky to live there twice. And in many ways, to me, Paris epitomizes sort of the ultimate expression of man's works of civilization. I mean, it's so beautiful, and the idea of the l'art de vivre is so beautifully expressed. So to me, it's sort of, the highest point of what we can do when we do it really well. And the other side is the complete opposite. It's the perfect expression of, if you were going to talk about works of God and works of man, it's works of God. And that's Africa. For me, being on safari and being in a really remote wilderness with incredible wild animals is something that just I adore. So I can't wait to get back to Africa. And then the third place that I always want to go is something that's completely new, because I think when you approach any place, and both Paris and Africa are perfect examples, when I go to them, I'm arriving with all of my memories of my past visits there. And there's something, and the people that I've been with there, and the experiences that I've had, and there's something wonderful about traveling in time. But there's also something so exciting about going to some place that you've never set foot before. And that can literally, and talking about the staycation, I mean, I'm planning to go to Block Island, which is off the coast of Long Island, which is, probably it'll take me less than an hour and a half to get there by car and ferry from my house. But in, all of the years that I've gone to Long Island, I've never taken that ferry. And so I'm incredibly excited to go someplace that's just new to me and see it for the first time.
That's wonderful. No, and I mean, I think there's a different awakening of the senses too, right? When we experience the new and the old. So, Melissa, this has been absolutely wonderful. And it's always so inspiring speaking with you. What phenomenal success you've had with Indagare. And of course, we wish you all well, and please stay safe. And of course, I'm hoping this hurricane swiftly passes over. But it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amrita. It's been a total pleasure. I really enjoy speaking with you. And please take care as well.